Yes, welcome into Sports Bit. Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy. Weekend preview edition, big game breakdown coming up. Big one now. Cubs on fire. They're at home against the Cardinals. We'll also get to Darvish and the Rangers against the red-hot Rays. Deep dive continues. A team we like, the New York Giants. Coming off an 11-win season. We'll get to them as we continue the NFC East and the play of the day. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books in a second. Oh, I love it. The Bible thumper, all about the Lord. Bible verses on his Twitter page. Hugh Freeze calling escorts, Teddy. He resigned. If he didn't resign, he was going to be fired. And, Houston Nutt's lawyer helped us going as they looked at his phone records. And Ole Miss did some digging, too. Not good for Ole Miss. We're ready to start the season here. And the coach is fired.
So you're saying that his call to the escort service wasn't just a misdial, Paulie? That's what he said it was. The AD...
Yeah, right.
The AD, Ross Bjork, quote, "We proactively looked into the rest of Hugh Freeze's phone records and found a concerning pattern." First of all, it's really embarrassing for Freeze, obviously. And I don't like to make fun of guys that are going through, hell in a bucket right now. But then again, Houston Nutt, lawyers find everything, man. And this all came up because the discovery from Houston Nutt's lawyers as he's filing a suit against for being fired and being blamed for sanctions. And meanwhile, sanctions are still hanging over the program. Forget all that. The new head coach, Matt Luke. Matt Luke was the offensive line coach and then the co-offensive coordinator over the last 6 seasons. He was a safe call because he played at Ole Miss from 1995 to 1998. He started 33 games at center. I'm not convinced that Matt Luke is the right guy for this program at this time. I'm not convinced that Matt Luke is a guy that won't have me downgrading my Ole Miss power rating maybe significantly, not just a point or two. I think this is a huge deal for Ole Miss. And Matt Luke, with the X's and O's, I'm not buying this guy one iota.
No, I'm with you. This could get ugly. Also, Neil McCready, Rebel Grove in December. The Ole Miss basketball team was playing at Va Tech on a Sunday afternoon, and Neil writes, "My phone was blowing up with reporters in South Carolina asking me about Luke. He was offered a multi-year deal to be the Gamecocks O-line coach. He was going to take the job, or at least leaning heavily towards doing so, but then he was told he was going to, if he would be the interim if Freeze was fired or let go, as the rumors were swirling. That is... there was a lot going on in his personal life. I guess we knew what was going on."
Yeah, and it sort of makes sense now why he would stay, Luke would stay at Ole Miss despite being offered, in theory, a promotion. Although, he's been co-OC, now he's going to be offensive line coach. But again, and I'm not in the locker room. When you hear Matt Luke talk, I'm not impressed. In terms of his ability to rally a team, in terms of his a first-time head coach in the SEC and all the requirements he's got to do to get his team ready on a week-in, week-out basis, this guy's no brain surgeon. He's a guy who's been knocking around in the trenches all these years. It's not obviously a disaster for Ole Miss, but from a power rating standpoint, the markets aren't sleeping on this. We've seen Ole Miss, they came off the board in some of the future markets today, and the money coming against the Rebels. And if you got to the window, or if you're thinking about getting to the window, I do it sooner rather than later. Although I'm not convinced that word is out about Matt Luke. I'm not sure that there's a lot of people out there that have a strong opinion about this guy. My sources say you should have a strong opinion about this guy, and maybe not a good one.
Drew Martin had a great tweet. How many SEC coaches would survive people going through their cell phones?
I'll take the under.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one. All right.
Whatever, SEC coaches, anybody, dude.
That's
anybody.
Fair too.
When you're a public figure, you have to deal with this kind of stuff. We're all humans. We all have our foibles. And, I'm not even going to get into the religious aspect of that, but even the religious guys tend to have things that they're hiding in one way or another, oftentimes.
That's why the SEC coaches are loving it. This guy was holier than thou, and he's placing phone calls to the Skinks. Bad bet. Look at this. You had Walker a scratch. Corbin replaced him. It was a ton of Reds money. They never had a chance.
Yeah, I don't know if they thought that maybe Corbin being moved up a day would impact his rhythm. Of course, the D-backs made it pretty easy for him. They went up 3-0 before he threw a pitch and then broke the game open late, 6 runs in the ninth. But, it's a Cincinnati team that right now has no business as chalk against anybody. And, of course, Jake Lamb and that D-backs offense continues to roll. Lamb, 2 home runs. Now he's up to 22 on the season.
Bad for the books. They bet this total up from 10 to 10.5, and they bet the Orioles, who went off the favorite. Hamels didn't have anything, and the Orioles roughed them up in a high-scoring game.
Yeah. I mean, the heat index was right at 100 for the first pitch, and when it's that hot, it's tough for any pitcher to last long in the heat and humidity. So what did we have? We had Hamels as a bet against, Miley as a bet against. The duo combined to allow 12 runs by themselves. Neither finished the 6th inning. By that time, the game was already over the total. The books took a beating on this one. Not a good result for the house.
All right, Las Vegas, let's get creative. And Tony Miller doing a good job at the Golden Nugget. I want to see what they do in faraway places as well. How many punches will McGregor land? Will his corner throw in the towel? Will he have a point deducted? Here at the Golden Nugget, yesterday they put up, you can pick who's going to win, and by round, look at these odds. Mayweather to win in the first round, 16 to 1. Mayweather in round 2, 18 to 1. You can also bet the look at this. Well, you can bet will the first round be completed? You got to lay 4,000 to win 100, but the takeback could be 15 to 1 if somebody gets knocked out in the first round. This is great. It's only a start. Doing a good job at the Golden Nugget.
Yeah, and there's certainly a couple of interesting wagers to talk about here. Look, if I'm betting McGregor, I'm betting McGregor early, and note the line shaded towards McGregor to win in rounds 1 and 2. All right, now I'm not betting McGregor, but if I was going to do it, he's got to land a blow. I don't think he's going to last. But that's the other question: is Mayweather's not really a knockout guy. You know what I mean? That's not his fighting style. And yet, will the fight last 12 rounds? Not just a dog. It's a pretty big dog when you look at the number. This is one that surprised me. The yes, will the fight go the full 12 rounds, plus 220. The no, minus 280. And that might be an underdog I would consider. Although, gosh, can McGregor last that long? I'm not convinced that he can.
No. Two things here. Number one, Larry Pepe, MMA expert, said for a guy his size, McGregor has horrible cardio. Also, the reports that he was knocked out in a sparring session. Oh, what's Mayweather going to do to him? Many think Mayweather can end it anytime he wants. And who knows, it might be the bet of a lifetime, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity if he gets as low as $4 or minus 350, because it's an avalanche of McGregor money all over the place. I can't believe it, Teddy.
That's all public money, dude. What the pros are waiting for with this particular fight, they're waiting for all the public money to come in, and on fight day, we're going to see wise guys running it all over Las Vegas, betting McGregor every which way that they can. But no reason to do it now, because obviously the trickle of money is coming in the other way. The flow of money likely to come back on McGregor, I would think, in the hours before the first punch is thrown.
Up next, big game breakdown, a good day game. Cardinals and the Cubs, red hot Cubs, only a game back in the division. We'll get to that coming up on SportsBet. And the Giants, betting insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Back on SportsBet, betting insight today. Time for big game breakdown, as always, powered by Bet Online. Go to Sportsbook Review for the latest and best offers to open a new account today. Day game coming up. Staff's been doing a great job getting the show out, so we can talk about the Cardinals and the Cubs. It's Martinez against Arrieta. Cubbies $1.50 at home. Game on, absolutely, in the NL Central. Brewers get swept by the Pirates. Cubs 6-0 since the break. Cubs only a game back, and the Pirates are now 500. They're only 3 back. Not only did the Cubs sweep Baltimore and Atlanta, they outscored them 44-17. Pitching was solid, and finally the offense is breaking out of it, Teddy.
Well, yeah, the Cubs had at least a 3-run lead in each and every one of those 6 games that they won at Baltimore and at Atlanta. Look at the numbers right here for that Cubs offense. Pre-break, there were number differences this year between the World Series team from last year and the 500 level squad from 2017. Obviously, the starting pitching wasn't as good, but in my mind, it was more about the offense. Look at the numbers pre-break: 239 batting average, 419 slugging, and look at the number since the break. They're hitting 316 as a team during this span and slugging over 600%.
All right, here's Arrieta. We've been talking about this on SportsBet. He settled down after a rough start, but still not showing an upside. You look at this graphic. He had a 1.77 2 years ago, then up to 3.10 ERA. Now his ERA is 4. He's struggling to keep the ball down, and he's getting tagged when it's up in the zone. Look at the home run fly ball ratio, 15.3. Look how big that's up. That's jumped since 2015. And look at the ground ball percentage too, Teddy. I have zero confidence in this guy if they were able to make the playoffs.
Sure, and again, Arrieta had, you talk about the dominant runs coming out of nowhere. Jake Arrieta was a bust when he arrived in Chicago. He was a guy that had a ton of potential, never was able to put it all together. He put together about as dominant a run as a pitcher's going to have over about a year and a half span. He hasn't been the same since. The name's still there. He got a whole lot of pub, and he made bettors a whole lot of money for a relatively brief period of time. He's no Clayton Kershaw in that regard, but when the ground ball rate is down and the home run to fly ball rate is up, you nailed it. He's getting tagged when he throws high in the zone.
Bad loss for the Cardinals. They led 2-1 in the bottom of the 8th. The bullpen couldn't hold it. Rosenthal lost the game in the 9th, couldn't go over to first base to cover an infield single by Reyes. Matt Carpenter, quote, "You got to get over. I turned and looked to throw, and he's nowhere close." Putting him on Front Street. That's great. Rosenthal, fundamental play, a pitcher's fielding practice. If we expect guys to play defense behind us, we got to do our part too as well. You know, we talked about this with Danny Duffy. The numbers are the same, but you look at the win-loss record, it's night and day from the last year. Look at Martinez. He was 16-9. Now he's 6-8, but the numbers are the same.
And again, there's a ton of randomness in actual baseball results when it comes to wins and losses for starting pitchers. Certainly the ERA is not a whole lot different. It's right in the same ballpark, but a guy that won 16 games last year is sitting at 2 games under 500 this year. And St. Louis, the defensive miscue that literally cost them the game yesterday, it's not atypical for this squad. The fundamentals for this year's Cardinals team, not where they've been in seasons past, and the defense for this year's Cardinals squad, they're making a whole lot more mistakes than they used to make, and that's why they're sitting now. Here we are, nearing the end of July, as a sub-500 squad.
All right, powered by BetOnline, game number 2, the Rangers and the Rays. It's Darvish against Cobb. Check out the bonus page on Sportsbook Review for the latest and best offers to open a new account today. Darvish on the road, $1.25, 7.5 the total. Who knows what the Rangers are going to do? Everyone's in it in the wild card race in the American League. Maybe they'll look to sell. Rays happy with where they are. They're having a great season. Nobody expected this. Darvish could be a trade bait, though, becoming a free agent after the season. They'd like to get something for him. He's got to do his part, though. He's got to pitch well.
Well, he's going to show a 1-6 with a 4.09 ERA over his last 10 start. But, again, there's vagrancies in baseball. He's been a lot better than a pitcher who should have won one. So it's only won one of his last 10 start. A 1.14 whip during that span. More strikeouts, 63, than hits allowed, 55. But the Rangers haven't been scoring for him. They haven't been scoring for anyone. Texas, in those 10 starts, only 2.5 runs per game during that span. And you look at this offense, let's see that graphic. Number 28 in batting average, number 23 in on-base percentage, number 16 in slugging, and on down the line. But the ERA hasn't been good. The fielding and independent pitching hasn't been good. This is a very mediocre team at best. They're 18 games behind the Astros. So they've got two choices. Do we hold on to Darvish and compete to sneak into a wild card berth and then have a one-game playoff to see if we actually really make the playoffs and be in that contention with 7, 8, 9 other teams? Who knows how many teams from the AL are going to be in contention in September? Feels like most of them will. Or do you look for trade targets for Hugh Darvish and try to restock the roster for the future? Texas has been on the fence, but it's certainly a pressure start for Darvish. Might be his last in a Rangers uniform.
All right, Cobb hasn't been the same since surgery. He missed all of 2015, but he's showing he knows how to pitch, and he's got a pretty good lineup behind him.
Yeah, he certainly is. Look, Cobb's career number, career best versus 2017. The miles, his fastball velocity is down. The strikeouts are down. What do we know about the betting markets? Well, we know the betting markets like guys who strike guys out. And the strikeout ratios and the fastball velocity goes a long way toward determining a money line for a baseball game. Alex Cobb has been fine this season. He's only walking less than 2.5 batters per 9 innings. He's got an 8-6 record, a 3.59 ERA. And unlike Texas, the Rays are hitting the baseball this season. Look, last year OPS are number 16 in baseball. This year, they're number 7. They've played good ball since the All-Star break, and I think this is a game we'll get back to before this show is over when it comes to play of the daytime.
Up next, the deep dive. The G-Men, 11-5 last year. The win total's only 8.5. What gives? I like what they did in the offseason. Could be an Eli problem, though. We'll get to that coming up on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Back on SportsBit, time for the deep dive. Follow us on Twitter at Pauly Howard, at Teddy_covers. The Giants, win total 8.5. $1.40 to the over, money pouring in on the over. You're seeing 9s at some books. Last year, 11-5 straight up, 8-6-2 ATS. 12 of the 16 games went under. 7 of the 8 games on the road went under. 7-2 straight up in games decided by less than a touchdown. Mainstream stats, 25 takeaways, 27 giveaways. A lot of issues on up. I mean, he couldn't run the ball at all. I like Perkins, but 3.5 yards per rush, 30th in the league. 6.5 yards per pass attempt, slightly above average. 5.2 yards per play, below average. Only 22 sacks allowed. Third best in the NFL, Teddy.
Yeah, the offense wasn't very good. Let's be real. As you mentioned, they couldn't run the football. They were below average in yards per play. The one thing that they were able to do a little bit, Eli didn't take a lot of sacks. And when he was able to complete a pass, he had more than his fair share of big play touchdowns. That went a long way towards that winning record over the course of the campaign, and that's why they were a playoff team. But let's be real. The reason the Giants made the playoffs last year was because that defense was pretty darn good.
Yes. Now, I like the moves they made. They bring in Brandon Marshall, so you got Marshall, Beckham, and Shepard. You also take Ingram, the tight end, out of Ole Miss. That's a good move. They also took the running back from Clemson as well, which isn't bad as well. But Eli, where are you at with Eli? Well, I think 26 touchdowns, 16 picks. He had some horrible games. But in spite of Eli, with a really good defense, they won 11 games.
Yeah, well, look, last offseason, the Giants made a big splash. And we talked about it. They signed the defensive tackle, Damon Harrison. They signed the cornerback, Janoris Jenkins. They signed the defensive end, Oliver Vernon. What was it, like $200 million they spent to bring those 3 guys into the fold? And thanks in large part to those upgrades, they were a playoff team for the first time since they won the Super Bowl back in 2011. Of course, they got blown out by the Packers in the opening round. But, we talk about that defense. For the season, 5.2 yards per play. That's a top quartile. 6.5 yards per pass attempt. Again, it wasn't a disaster. Not great. But number 2 in the NFL against the run. They had a pretty good pass rush as well. So you say, what's the deal with Eli? Eli wasn't that good a season ago. And you can see it pretty clear when you look at this graphic. We're talking about a guy, he's 36 years old. He's not his brother. He's Eli. This is his 14th season in the league. And over the last couple of seasons, the weapons around him are fine. The offensive line is reasonable. Eli Manning has been steadily declining. QBR of 67.5, 7.3 yards per pass in 2014. By 2016, the QBR was down more than 10 points. The yard per pass down more than half a yard. That's a significant drop-off and a significant concern for a team that doesn't really have a great situation at the backup quarterback this season. All that Ryan Nassib talk, well, he's trying to hang out in New Orleans right now. If something happens to Eli, the Giants' season is probably done.
Well, he could also have a big year because he has so many weapons, and imagine if they get the running game going. But this is a team that does not have stats. You look at this. Mike Lombardi had a great line about they were running a Ponzi scheme last year. You look at the turnover battle, and they couldn't run the ball, and somehow they still won 11 games.
Defense. They won the close games, and they played great defense. Football, yeah, sure. Offense is about close to half of it. So's defense, so's special teams, and they did pretty good in that regard. And they didn't neglect. You talked about Evan Ingram. Signing him drafting him, the number 1 pick out of Ole Miss, and I think that I'm with you. They do have a lot of weapons right now for Eli to throw to. But I like the second pick as well, Dalvin Tomlinson, the defensive tackle at Alabama. He's someone that's going to be plugged right into the rotation. And, of course, maybe the QB of the future in Davis Webb from Cal in the third round. And you remember Wayne Gallman. He was a difference maker at Clemson and a guy who has potential. I don't know if he's actually going to do it, but he has potential to give him some burst in the running game. But, you talked about Brandon Marshall joining OBJ and Shepard, Victor Cruz and his dancing shoes gone. One thing that I want to focus on the offensive line depth is better, Pauly. It really is. They signed the former Chargers first-round pick DJ Fluker, and then they thought they were going to squeeze John Jerry out of New York. Instead, they re-signed Jerry just a couple of days later. The Bobby Hart at right tackle, is a guy that they like a lot. It's not a team that was able to make a ton of moves this offseason, but the moves they made, I thought, I'm with you. They were good ones, and offensive line depth is an area of strength for the Giants this year that hasn't been that way in many recent seasons.
Tough schedule. The NFC East plays the NFC West and the AFC West. 2 extra games. Detroit at home, who they beat at home last year, and they also go to Tampa. Only 6 1 p.m. Eastern time starts. A lot of primetime games. You're putting them on national TV to feature Eli and company.
Sure. I mean, the NFL will be rooting for the Giants to succeed this season. As you mentioned, for an East Coast team to only play 6 games that start at 1 o'clock Eastern time, that's a rarity. So you're going to see the Giants a lot on TV. And if they're good, they have the potential to be something of a public team. And we've seen that in years past. Of course, when the New York teams are good, they tend to get a pretty big bandwagon and more than their fair share of media attention.
What do you think of this with the Giants, gun to head, and what do you think of the division?
There's a number of teams that I don't like in this division. We talked about Dallas yesterday. I'm not in love with the Cowboys. We'll get to the Redskins. I'm not in love with the Redskins either. If I'm playing the Giants, I might play the Giants to win the division. And I would probably, but obviously we've seen the markets move heavily towards New York as they're fading the Cowboys and they're fading the Redskins in early betting action.
All right, money time, play of the day. Back to the Tampa-Texas game. What are we doing, Teddy?
Yeah, let's take a look at game betting number 918, the Tampa Bay Rays. You can get them at plus 115 right now. And look, Tampa's the better of these two teams. They're the hotter of these two teams. They're hitting right now. I know you, Darvish, has been good. I want money on Alex Cobb in this one. Take the Rays at the plus price, plus 115 as we record. That's our play of the day.
All right, very good. Another strong week. We're 2 weeks away from the start of football with the Hall of Fame game. We'll finish out the NFC East and the AFC West next week. Safe travels, Teddy. We'll see you when you get back. And thanks for watching SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.